In this tutorial we're gonna have a look how we can create this power up. So we're jumping lot less, as you can see, but once we collect this portion you will see this player game object gonna jump too much high. Basically we're just increasing the jump. So let's collect this. As you can see, we can jumping a lot. So we're going to use a scriptable object for this, which is data container. And before we jump into the coding part or into this tutorial, I just want to thanks for donating in this month on Patreon, IHoist and Ayumi OTB. And I also have a pretty beginner course in the Udemy. You can go and check that out. You will find in the description, which is for complete beginners. So you can go and check that out. So let's get into this tutorial. Scriptable objects mean we can just put values there. Simply you can say something like data container and we can put values, and we can use that those scriptable objects assets to just make up anything that we want to do, like jumping, moving a little bit faster. So we're going to create that. So let's move over to project tab, then assets folder. Let's right click there, then create, and then go over to this scripting and then scriptable object script. Don't select this mono behavior script. Instead we need to select this scriptable object script. Why? Because we're not going to attach this script to any game object of our in our hierarchy. Instead we're going to create a asset, or you can say a container, and we can simply just gonna put values there, and we can use that to make our player jump or moving a little bit faster, something like that. So let's click on this scriptable object and name that that script to anything you like. So I'm gonna move over to my project tab, assets, and I will head over to this script folder. I already created a scriptable object script over here, and I just name it to something like jump, as you can see. So let's open that up script so let's open that up real quick by double clicking on it. And as you can see right over here, it just created a path where we just want to create. Firstly this jump, firstly you can see in the menu name over here is scriptable objects path and then slash jump. So if we move over to Unity, then go over to project tab, assets, right click there, then create. In the bottom we can see scriptable objects paths, and then the jump over here slash the jump. So you can create the assets right over here, or the container, and then you can just put values there. So but before we do, let's go over to script and let's create a property, something like jump height. We're gonna call jump height or player jump. So let's call it we're gonna make it public because we just want to access this parameter through another class, or you can simply say another script, and that will be float. And we can call this something like let's call it jump amount. So let's call it jump amount, and we're gonna set equal to something, a default value, and let's set it something like 15, and we're gonna close that up with some semicolon. So I just set it 15 because the normal jump of this player game object I'm just making. If we move over to this player script over here, over here you can see jump height and it says 7. So that's why I just bump up the value right there. So which is the amount 15 by we set, as you can see. So let's press down Ctrl S in order to save our script, and let's move over to Unity. So we can create that asset or that jump amount property right over here in this assets folder. To create that, we just need to right click, and then we need to go to that path as they're defined you saw. So let's do that. So let's move over to project tab, assets, let's right click there, then create. In the bottom we can see scriptable objects and then jump. So let's click there, click on that property, and if we select that jump and then go over to inspector in the right, we can see jump amount by default we set 15. So once this player game object collect this portion, I just want to increase. So I just created a game object right over here. You can create anything like that, and once you just collide with that, you can just increase your amount whatever you just want to do that. So I have this portion game object in my hierarchy, and I added two components to this game object. First first thing, I just added a rigid body and I set it to kinematic, so it's not gonna fall down due to our gravity. And make sure you just go to collision detection and you set it to continuous, so it just gonna detect any collision continuously. And I also added a polygon collider 2D, or you can just add up any collider 2D you want, because we just added this this collider 2D for collision detection. So if the player game object collide with this portion, then we just want to increase, and I assigned this portion as a portion tag in the inspector, you can see. So select the game object first in the hierarchy, then go over to inspector, click on this, it will be untext something like that. So just click there, click on add tag, and then click on this plus icon and name it to something like that, and then click on that save. And make sure you just go to that game object one more time, go over to inspector, then tag, it says untag, and we're gonna assign whatever we just recently named it. So I assigned this portion game object as a portion tag, you can see in the inspector. So now what we need to open up the player script where we colliding. So let's select our player game object in the hierarchy and let's open up the player script by double clicking on it, and we're gonna use on collision on enter 2D, and we need a reference to this. If we move to project tab assets, and then we just need a reference to this jump asset, so then we can set the value as we can see in the inspector, and jump amount is 15. So we need a reference of this jump assets. So let's go to script now, and let's go to top of our class. I already grabbed the reference, so I'm going to remove this. So we need a reference to that jump asset. So what we need to do, we're going to make a public, and we need a reference to that property, which is our jump asset. So we need a reference, so the type is jump as using. So basically you need to make the same name as you did over here, which is jump, we can see right over here. Or the name of the scriptable object script. Basically you need to type the same name. So if we move to Unity and then go over to assets folder, then script, I have created over here the scriptable object script, which is we can double click that to open that up in Visual Studio. So we just name it jump as you can see. So we need a reference to this script, which is our scriptable object jump script. So we need a reference of this jump, then we can set, or we can just access this jump amount, which is 15 by default we set. So we need a reference. So let's go to that player script and let's grab the reference. So the script name is jump as using, so that's why we just name it jump, because basically we need a reference of that and we need to name it what we want to name it. So let's call it jump asset, something like that, and let's close that up with semicolon, and we're gonna press down Control S to save our script. And let's move over to Unity, and underneath our player script we will able to see that field. So what we need to do right there, we need to drag this jump asset into that folder. Basically this is a scriptable object, or you can simply say data container, it's just gonna contain the data. So now if we select our player game object in the hierarchy, move over to player script, we can see in the bottom jump asset and it says none, it will be something like none. So what we need to do over here, we need to drag the assets. So let's go to project tab assets, and I just created over here. So let's select that jump asset and drag it right over here. So we need we have the reference as you can see by now. So let's open up the player script by double clicking on it, and we can see basically what we will do, we will move over to bottom, and then we're gonna use this on collision enter 2D function, and you can just ignore these things right over here. So this function over here on collision enter 2D, this function get called when we collide with something. Let's suppose we collide with this portion game object, then this function right over here will get called, and we can extract info what we collided with by moving over to this collision parameter, like the game object we collided with, the name of the game object we collided with, the tag, anything like that. So what we're gonna do over here, we're gonna check. So we will type this if, so make first bracket and some curly brackets. So what we want to check right over here, we're just gonna go over to this collision, and then we will move over to that game object, and we're gonna access that tag, and we will check if that tag is equals to portion. If that is the case, that means we need to collect. So what we basically have done over here, we're just moving over to that game object and then accessing the tag. So collision dot game object basically means the game object we collided with. So let's suppose we collide with this portion game object. So collision dot game object over here just gonna be this portion game object, because we just colliding with this portion game object, and then we just moving over to that game object and then accessing the tag of that game object. And we do know we assigned this portion as a portion tag, as you can see in the inspector. So we just accessing the tag of that game object and we checking if the tag is equals to portion, means we really colliding with that portion game object, means we just colliding with this. So what we need to do, we need to firstly destroy and we need to increase our jump. So if we select our player game object in the hierarchy, move over to player script, we can see by default we set the jump height 7. So we just want to set the jump height a little bit up, or with that scriptable object as we created. So if we move to project tab, assets, we can see over here. So and we do know that we have a reference of this jump scriptable or this jump asset, we have a reference, and we can see the jump amount we set in the inspector, which is 15 by default we set. So we have the reference, so we're gonna set the jump height of this player game object with this jump amount, which we can see 15 in the inspector. So let's go to script now. So we just colliding with that game and we checking, means we really colliding with that portion game object. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set the jump height, and jump height over here basically means the player jump, basically this right over here, and we set 10 and we set in the inspector which is 7. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna set the jump height. So let's go to where we colliding. So jump height I'm gonna set equal to jump asset dot jump amount, and let's close that up with semicolon. So the jump height which we set in the inspector 7, and we're setting equal to jump asset dot jump height. Basically we're just moving over to this jump scriptable object script and just accessing this jump height, which is 15, as you can see in the inspector. So that's why this jump height right over here just gonna be 15, because then just jump asset dot jump amount right over here is 15. So that's why this jump height just gonna be 15, because we directly setting it, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea. And after collecting or colliding with this portion game object and increase the jump, we just want this portion game object to be destroyed after collecting that. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to this over here where we colliding, and we're gonna use this destroy function in order to destroy the game object, and brackets you need to pass the game object you want to destroy. So we want to destroy this portion game object. So what we're gonna do right over here, we're gonna pass collision dot game object, and we're gonna close that up with semicolon. And collision dot game object basically means the game object we collided with. So we're gonna collide with this portion game object. So collision dot game object right there basically means this portion game object. So after increasing the jump height, as you can see, which 15 by default we set, so this jump height just gonna be 15 once we collide with that portion, because in our player we just normally jumping with 7 unit. Once we collect that or collide with that portion, so we setting jump height equal to jump asset dot jump amount. Basically we just moving over to this jump scriptable object script, and then we just accessing this jump amount, which is 15, as you can see. So this over here jump height just gonna be 15, because this jump height jump asset dot jump amount is 15 we set. So we're gonna press down Control S in order to save our script, and now let's move over to Unity. So once we collect this portion game object, you will see that our jump just gonna increase with our jump amount. So by default we set in the inspector, we can see jump amount is 15 over here. And now if we select our player game object, move over to player script, jump height as you can see with we have 7, but once we collide or collect this portion game object, you will see this jump height over here just gonna be 15 right away. So let's do that. So I'm gonna click on this play button in the top to play our game, and let's have a look on that. So just wait for to compile. So jump height is 7. So if I just press down space on my keyboard, you can see we just jumping a little bit a lot less. But once we collide with this portion game object, you will see we're just gonna jump a little bit high. So now I just collected, and if we just press down space key, by now we can see we're just jumping a lot, and we can see the property with basically the jump. If we move over to inspector and then move over to this player script, we can see jump height is 15 by now, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea that how you can just set this. So I'm gonna get out of play mode, and if we just get out of play mode and then go over to that player game object, we can see player in player script jump height is 7, but once we collect this portion game object, this jump height just becoming 15. Why? If we select this jump in the over here, that asset, and then go over to inspector, we can see jump height jump amount we set 15. 15, and we can just go to this that script by double clicking on it, and we just created a jump scriptable object script, as you can see over here. And this over here, it just created the part where we just want to create the asset, and you can just change the path name as well. It's totally up to you. And we just created a variable called jump amount, and we set 15. So basically scriptable objects means data container. We can simply put values there, and you can create multiple properties or multiple variables or parameter as well to whatever basically you just want to do. I hope you get the idea of this. Thanks for watching this tutorial till the end, and I will see you in the next tutorial. So okay, goodbye for now.